Welcome into another edition of New Track Record Podcast from the WELT studios. Caleb Hatch, Justin Kinney with you. IndyCar at Thermal, an official race this time, hopefully better than what we saw last year. And new car issues. We'll dive in to those topics this week. But first, hello, Justin.
Hello, Mr. Hatch. How are you?
Good. Yourself?
Good. Now, last episode, we talked about how warm it was. Today, it's like 35 and spitting snow.
Yeah, there was like sleet earlier, I guess. I didn't see any up here, but I know it was snowing because my parents came into town and they said it was sleeting. They stopped for lunch in Roanoke. So
Roanoke's nice if you've ever been. Nice little quaint town.
They went to the Emporium, which is excellent.
Yes, very
Not a sponsor, just saying it's a good place.
We went from storms last night, windy, severe storms, strong storms moving through that ripped off a piece of my trim off the house that I need to get fixed, to just cold and breezy and spitting snow today. Like we said, just wait 24 hours and weather will change in Indiana, particularly on the today is the official start of spring.
Is it today?
The unofficial,
tomorrow?
Like 20th, 21st. It's always like the 20th, 21st. So you never know what you're going to get in March and heck, even April. And it's even kind of up in the air sometimes in May when we start up the festivities at the Speedway. So, we just got to roll with the punches here, but there will not be any weather issues in sunny, warm Thermal this week.
No. I saw the weather is supposed to, race day is supposed to be upper 80s. Today is officially the first day of spring. I did not know.
About that. There you go.
So that makes sense. It's usually March 20th. It's probably always March 20th. I just didn't realize it.
Well, now you do. Now you know.
Now I know.
We're celebrating in style here in Northeast Indiana. It is 35 degrees and spitting snow.
Enough weather talk. I'm sure that's what everyone comes to this podcast for.
Exactly. Now you're up to date
weather.
For what's going on here.
Let's start with the new car stuff because I'm sure it'll be a more spirited discussion. There are some things to discuss about Thermal that's going to be fascinating, but we'll start with the new car. Nathan Brown, IndyStar.com, had a really good write-up with a lot of good quotes talking about a new car, and the headline, I think this is kind of tells the story. Why do we need one? In quotes, IndyCar team owners divided on direction in pursuit of new car. And that was Chip Ganassi saying, why do we need one? And of course, we talked about this last week, so we're staying firm. Why would he want a new car? I understand from the series standpoint, to attract new fans. A new car is a way to do that if you do it right, which, again, listen to last week's episode. We had a full discussion on this. But Chip Ganassi and Roger Penske, why would they have any desire to change the way it's set up now? There's none. They're dominating as it is. You don't want to lose that advantage. I mean, this is racing after all. So I understand his questions. And look, a lot of the team owners, to be fair, have the same question. If it's going to be incremental gains, why are we doing it? Which is kind of his point. You need to go big and really have a vision if you're going to do this project. And it sounds very unclear on what that vision is.
It was a tale of two stories this week coming out from Nathan Brown of the Indy Star. It was this story, and then today, Thursday, as we record, a story with an exclusive interview with Mark Miles. And if you read one and then read the other, you'd wonder, what's the disconnect between the paddock and what they understand to be the case right now with that car, and that what Mark Miles is explaining to us through Nathan Brown in this article that came out today? Because it seemed like a lot of the things he said, talking about Mark Miles, are coming out for the first time. Why isn't the paddock? So the paddock, we talked about it last week. We've heard the car is not noticeably lighter. Well, Mark Miles comes out today in the Indy Star and says, yes, it's going to be lighter. We've heard also the talk about all new car, all new parts, and that's going to be the approach. And what does Mark Miles say today in the Indy Star? There's going to be some parts that transfer, and probably not parts that we see, but parts in the chassis. He shouldn't be explaining that to us. He should be explaining it to the paddock. Because there just seems to be a vast, vast difference in what is understood to be factual and what is not right now behind the scenes with this new car.
And I think what's at play here with the owners is they met in October. They got the design, the plan. It was not really something that was an element up for discussion. It was, this is what we're doing.
It was like they showed up. Like
it seems like there's been no real communication ever since.
I think the team owners seem to think that they were showing up to brainstorm what they would like to see in the new car, and they get into that meeting and they're shown a rendering of the new car. And they're like, wait a second. I thought we were going to talk about this. And now Mark Miles is trying to backtrack into Nathan Brown and say, oh, well, we were just kind of getting ahead of things, but we were taking all that under consideration, everything that the team owners have said. And it's kind of, whatever, tongue in cheek. Quite frankly, I don't believe a word out of Mark Miles's mouth anymore. And so I have a hard time believing that the infamously private Roger Penske and Penske Corp is all of a sudden going to go, yeah, every team owner, we want to hear not only hear your thoughts, but we're going to take them into heavy consideration when we do this car. Or, hey, Honda and Chevy, we want to hear from you and take it under heavy consideration what we want to do. I think it's a lot of people in Penske Corp saying this is what we think is the best for the series, and we're just going to push it through and develop it no matter what people say. It's just IndyCar is undefeated in making things vastly more difficult than they should be, and this is the latest example.
Well, Mark Miles literally is quoted saying, whatever we showed in October was options in our current status. Talking about back then, we've never put something out and said, what do you think of this? Because this is what we want to do. So they don't want input, which is fine.
It's like,
but the problem is it doesn't seem like stuff has been clearly communicated in this process.
Not at all. Even the simple things. Is this thing going to be as heavy or lighter? Paddock doesn't know.
Don't know.
We don't need to know those things.
No.
Paddock should.
Paddock, yeah. Teams, Honda, Chevy, parts suppliers. I mean, obviously, Dallara is going to be in the know.
Right. I mean, even if you're going, okay, this is version 1. Let's say the version that was shown to the teams in October was version 1. You think now it's March. From what we understand, there has been no renderings whatsoever seen by any team owners since October. Mm-hmm. You would think, okay, October, here's version 1. We made some adjustments. After Christmas, you come back, here's version 2, team owners. This is what we're looking at. This is what maybe what the weight will be, blah, blah, blah. What do you think? Okay, we have some other adjustments in early March. Here you come back. Here's version 3. What do you think? Here we are. We've done some testing in the wind tunnel, of which we've heard that has been going on. That would be the natural progression of things, wouldn't it?
But it would.
We're not seeing it. We're one thing. We don't need to see this thing, but the team owners should be seeing the development of this car. And it's obvious, not only are they not seeing it, they're not getting pertinent information regarding the development of this thing. Even something is coming back and say, hey, remember the side pods and how they looked in October? Well, we're going to do this to them. Like, that's just simple stuff that you would think the owners would know, but they don't.
Bobby Rahal had some interesting quotes. I mean, a lot of the owners had interesting quotes in one of these stories. He said, I don't know anything other than what we learned 6 months ago. And then later on went on to say, I have a sneaking feeling it's changed a bit talking about the car, but I don't know what that means. So, again, proving your point. Right. And then I thought Dan Tauris, who's now the CEO of TWG Motorsports, obviously they own Andretti Global, he's kind of more on track with what IndyCar needs to do. He said, we want to see the latest and greatest machine. This was back in St. Pete. We want to see something fans are super excited about. The greatest response would be that they see something that competes with Formula One. Wouldn't that be something for IndyCar? I'm less concerned about the cost and more about the impact for the series. I think to incur the cost and have it just be an incremental thing would be a disappointment. And I think he goes on to say it needs to elevate the series, no question. But the incremental thing, I think that's the other concern in this process, right? Is, and this is where Chip's quote saying, why are we doing this? And two things can be true. We can say that Chip doesn't want a new car because he doesn't want to spend money if it's not an upgrade. But we can also say that he doesn't want a new car because that changes the competitive balance of the series and things are more open. And yes, the cream always rises to the top.
Correct.
When it comes to these situations. We've seen it time and time again. But He doesn't stand to benefit from a new car. However, if you're just going to do an incremental thing, it's a waste of time. And we said all this last week.
Yes,
but it's a complete waste. Just like Dan Tower said, it's a complete waste of time. If it's incremental, you have to go big on this project because IndyCar has sat on their hands for the last 12 years. And remember, this iteration of car, what is this, like 3.0 or whatever? But like, think about what we were sold when this new car was being tested. You know, oh, we're going to have aero kits and we'll create this chassis that's a shell. And then, you know, companies like, and the thought was, you know, aerospace companies.
Yeah, they mentioned like Lockheed and stuff coming in.
You know, Boeing. It's like, okay, that's great. But IndyCar was certainly not.
Nobody ever came in
position.
You had the OEMs develop.
Shoved on Honda and Chevy. And then the aero kits had to be changed because it was completely uncompetitive. Chevy dominated that era. And then they went back to just a universal aero kit. So everything we were sold way back for 2012 simply did not. Yes, they did have aero kits, but it was not how it was sold.
No, not at all.
And you only had 3 OEMs for not even half a season.
Yeah. I think here's the thing, and the unique thing in the IndyCar paddock is you have so many different types of owners. You're never going to bat 1,000 and make all of them happy, right? That's guaranteed. You have guys that will say, we need to push this sport forward into the future and have a really sleek and sexy design that's really going to capture people's attention, like Zach Brown and Taurus that are gonna spend, right? And Penske and Ganassi will go along with it too, right? But then you have also people on the other end that if all of a sudden the price point went up considerably for chassis because of the design,
they're talking $1 million a chassis,
right? You would have the Dale Coynes and the Juncos and stuff going, whoa, we can't afford this, right? So instead of I guess you look at IndyCar and they try to appease everybody and they ended up appeasing nobody, or But I also think here's another point. I think David Land made a point of this a couple days ago on Twitter. Is what do you want this new car to be? Do you want it to be a tool for the drivers and the drivers push the series forward, which is what everybody's been asking for and what Fox has done a good job so far with? Or do you want the technology and the cars to push the sport forward? And you can look in Formula One and say you feel like the technology and the cars and the companies involved push the sport forward, maybe more so than the majority of the drivers not named Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton or maybe even Lando Norris at this point. That's the thing. Where do you want the next car to go? Do you want it to be utilitarian or you want it to be really eye-catching and really be the story? And I don't even think IndyCar knows that either. And I think you have some team owners that want it to be utilitarian and it's not very more expensive than it is now. But you also have the top-end people that are saying, yeah, we want futuristic next level, because make no mistake, I think that if McLaren, at least McLaren and maybe even Andretti, if they get in and everything goes to zero, I believe McLaren with their resources would be every bit as good as Penske and Ganassi, if not better, through the entirety of the lifespan of the next car, because they will invest. They just came in and they were 6-7 years behind. Right. And it's very difficult to catch up. And same with Andretti. I think if you got into it with the investments that they're making at zero, we could get back to what we would like to see with a Power 4. But until that reset happens, you have a Power 2. It's just so many different elements of this story. And it feels like the fan base is in one spot trying to figure things out. But unfortunately, it seems like the paddock is in the same thing. And maybe reading Nathan Brown's story today within the paddock, they're learning things for the first time. And that shouldn't happen.
No. And you hope this improves. It's just, man, the track record for IndyCar on this sort of thing doesn't give you confidence. No, and I guess that ultimately all of this discussion comes down to that for me. I don't feel confident that we're looking at a new car in 2027.
Well, even that story today that came out, he's talking about portions of the car coming out in 27. Like, what does that even mean?
I mean,
We're
we
doing
can't do another
and after
hybrid
Indy,
rollout like halfway through the season. I mean, that was bad enough.
Parts that are going to be introduced in 27, but the entirety of the car in 28. Like, what are we doing? I just, it's typical IndyCar. Just, when's the last time, to your point, they had a major development technologically that rolled off without a hitch?
Aeroscreen.
Yeah. But even then, it grossly affected the car.
Yes.
And it still is impacting the car with the weight and the balance. And then you throw the hybrid in there with the hybrid system in the back. And we saw what that did to balance at St. Petersburg with the first race we've had with the hybrids there. That's another thing is Mark Miles stressed to the point that the new car would be have hybrid technology. And we talked about it last week. Like, if you don't bring in more OEMs and Honda leaves, what the hell's the point of the hybrid in the first place? So, this should be a collective effort, and it's not a collective effort, unfortunately.
I want to be excited about a new car, but in order to be excited, there needs to feel like there's a cohesive plan and that stuff is being executed on the timeline that they say.
Right.
And we've just have too many past examples of that not happening for other projects.
They have not earned the benefit of the doubt
from
us.
Correct.
I mean, they haven't. And when Bobby Rahal goes and says, I haven't seen anything, an update in 5 months, 6 months, which is October, that can't happen. Like, you can't leave your team owners in the dark about what's going on with this car. Everything from design to cost to timeline, they should be in the know with all of that. And they're not. They're simply not.
No. You want to talk about something at least a little more positive?
Well, yeah, for sure. Let's do it. Why not?
Let's talk about Thermal and the Thermal Grand Prix at Thermal Club coming up this weekend. A lot of unknowns. First time this is a race event. I'm so curious about this event for so many factors, and we're going to highlight basically all of them here. You have the fact that this is a race that is brand new in terms of being a championship event that doesn't have any name cachet compared to a St. Pete or a Long Beach early in the season. It's going up against the second round of the NCAA tournament. And also, we don't know how it's going to race. The tires, Firestone has made adjustments because the track just seems to eat up the tires.
Right.
Racer had an article on that. They made some changes on some turns on the course. They made changes for the grandstands. It does sound like they're happy with where they're at in ticket sales. VIP basically sold out, and they had put out 5,000 GA type tickets, and those were mostly gone.
Yeah.
And the other factor of this race, if Thermal wants to keep paying a sanctioning fee, probably will come back unless this weekend's a disaster, because $2 million for pretty much anyone who has a home on the property is nothing. But it's just a matter of how will this play out on TV? How will the racing be? A lot of unknowns. I think it could either be real exciting or a disaster. I don't feel like we're going to get something in between.
Really? You don't think there's a middle ground?
No.
No driver, because the final last year was 20 laps.
Yes.
Right? And the heats were 8 and 10 laps.
Mm-hmm. There was still the break. There's the first
in the
10
final.
Mm-hmm.
So they only raced 10 laps under green.
Yes.
On any tire, basically. So yes, that is an unknown. Sometimes unknowns are good. Sometimes unknowns are bad. There's been some track adjustments as well from last year that was trying to straighten out a little bit in terms of, is it that complex? I want to say
16-17.
The 16-17 complex that was a little, it's not like a chicane, but kind of a wobble, I'd call it, like a wobble on the straight. But there's just a lot of questions. Here's my thing. It's not going to play good on TV. There's nobody there. That's just the thing. There's not very many people there on a 3-mile track. There's not very many people there. You just hope the racing's good. If the racing's good, everything else is fine, in my opinion, because I think this series, quite frankly, desperately needs really exciting races.
Yes.
It has. And I know we've just had one race. I get it, but it has to start delivering for these new eyes that are tuning in. It has to. And you hope it starts at Thermal. You hope not every race has to be a banger, but you have to start having some bangers, right?
Well, and the funny thing is, like, people are concerned about the racing with a new car, and I'm like,
well, that's the thing. People keep saying
it's going to be worse.
Well, we don't want to take anything from the racing. We have great racing, and I'm like, really? I mean, sometimes, not all the time.
The hybrid has made the great racing aspect less of an argument.
Yeah, I just since the middle of last season, there's been more stinkers than good races, people, and maybe that should be talked about more, and I think it will be as we get past this weekend and Barber and Long Beach. You know, if we keep having stinky races, then it's really going to be talked about. But I kind of look at other racing series, and NASCAR's had some really good races to start the season. Formula One was very much helped by the weather, of course, but that was a really good race in Australia last weekend. You can't keep coming out with the most competitive racing in the world and, how exciting it is when it's not. And it'd be nice if we had some other teams win some races too.
Yes.
I hope it delivers this week. Not just for Thermal, but just for IndyCar. We need to start having really good racing.
The thing I'll say about Thermal, and I've said this before, but I think the visuals minus the crowd, the thing is
the backdrop's
the backdrop's great. The San Gabriel Mountains in the background, awesome. The houses, awesome, right? It looks cool. It looks like you're racing at an exclusive country club because
Correct.
You are. I just hope that the on-track product can also be a selling point because last year, outside of Colton Herta taking a risk on the tires and just kind of coasting and then going for it late, there wasn't a whole lot besides, a first turn crash in one of the heats.
Right.
Wasn't a whole lot to write home about for this.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about it last year after that race. It just wasn't enough money for drivers to take risks, right? If it was $5 million, $10 million, then maybe you have guys making some risky moves, but why wreck a race car for a piddly $1 million, right? Last year. But I think the future,
$500,000, remember?
$500,000, that's right. Because asterisk, $1 million challenge, asterisk. I do think that the future of Thermal on the schedule hinges more on the racing on this weekend than maybe the show or the view, from
yes.
TV.
Well, and
if this race delivers and is exciting, then it should be back on the schedule, quite frankly.
I still will be surprised because you have Arlington essentially in this slot next year.
Correct.
You hope to add Mexico City prior to Long Beach. It just seems like those are the options. But the thing is, there'd still be a big gap schedule-wise of a month between Arlington and Mexico City. So does it fill in again? And maybe they go back to it being a non-points kind of event, but have a bigger purse. That I could see.
Maybe, or like we mentioned last week, is it the spring training location?
Yeah.
Maybe you have that $5 million challenge asterisk next year, culminating a weekend of spring training, a couple testing days and then a race, something like that. Have livery reveals and interviews and state of the series and all that stuff. Make it an event. I think it'd be cool there. But I do think, though, if and breaking it down in simplest terms, IndyCar still is at a premium for racetracks and entities that want to pay seven figures to host an IndyCar race. And if Thermal and their rich folk that live there want to pay upwards of seven figures to host a race, who's to
Can't
say
turn it down.
Yeah, it was to say IndyCar shouldn't keep going there, especially if the racing is pretty decent this weekend. So that's why I'm kind of hoping the series just needs a good race, because we've lacked them in the hybrid era, and it'd be nice for Thermal to stick around, whether it's on the schedule, whether it's part of spring training, whether it's just a standalone event like we saw last year. It was said in the Racer article, the amount of money that they're bringing in for the tickets is going to offset that sanctioning fee. So if it works all around, keep going there. But I think if the racing is lacking, if the drivers are saying this is processional and wasn't much excitement, blah, 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 then I don't know if it returns. But if the money's there, and there's a lot of money at Thermal, then you keep going.
And they have Pato Award on a billboard, thanks to Hickey93 for finding this. Felix Rosenquist had posted a picture of the IndyCar race Pato on a billboard. So, again, the joke that keeps on giving. Taking a look at previewing this event itself.
How much would you take out of last year's event?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Yeah.
Nothing. Not who won, not who didn't do well, who didn't qualify for nothing. You're just coming in.
It's gone from an exhibition to a points-paying event. So people who are holding back because they're just trying to protect their car, that's why I can't take anything away. Yeah. Because if you made it, you wanted to make it through your heat and protect your car. So I can't take of course Alex Blow is going to be a contender this weekend, but that wouldn't matter what racetrack we were at. So that doesn't really mean anything different, I guess, to me. So I'm not taking away a whole lot on that.
Yeah.
You?
No, I agree. I think I still put Penske and Ganassi at the top. They finished 1-2 last year in this event. But I think the uncertainty can breed excitement and chaos, and I would welcome excitement and chaos this weekend.
Oh, for sure. So here are 3 key stats from Chad 200 for Thermal. Half of the drivers in the feature race at Thermal last year are either with new teams or out of the series completely. 99 races since the number 28 car won a race. That's obviously Marcus Ericsson. Driver the number 28 will start his 99th race. And Alex Blow could become the second driver since 2010 to win the first 2 races in a season. He joined teammate Scott Dixon, who did it in 2020. He won, the first 3 that year, and obviously went on to win the championship.
So interesting stats there. I do find the interesting about half of the field in that final is now with the teams, which is very interesting. But I think I don't consider tire strategies tire strategies nice. It varies, it mixes things up, but I don't want all of the on-track passing being because somebody's on one set of tires and somebody's on another. So my question is, I think the great unknown is... Will
the alternates be more of an option?
Well, yeah, as opposed to race them as little as possible and then get off them.
Yeah.
Especially with how rough this track is, and only racing in it. Basically, the longest stint they went last year was 10 laps on these tires. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to have to go much further. So I know people kind of get excited about, tire strategy and reds versus blacks. I mean, that's okay, but I also want some natural racing with guys on the same tires and stuff on the track. Like that's what this series, quite frankly, has been missing for the better part of half a season plus, is actual racing on track between 2 or more cars on the same strategy. We just haven't seen it. And maybe if that, coming back to the car thing, if they would say a concerted effort, hey, all this weight is being put at the weight distribution is off. What we're working on is, it may be the same weight, but we're working on different ways to differentiate the weight. Like, it almost seems like a problem that IndyCar doesn't want to recognize is the racing has fallen off considerably.
Yeah, I don't think they're acknowledging that at all.
I still think they look at it and say, look at us. We're still the most competitive racing in the world. We go to all these different tracks, and you're kind of looking at like, well, NASCAR's starting to do that, right? I mean, Formula One is Formula One, but if this year delivers on the Formula One side, you could have 4 teams in it for a championship. I mean, the Wood brothers just won a freaking race in NASCAR. There's other competitive series out there that so far have had better headlines than IndyCar. Now, granted, just one race. But if you go back post Indy 500 last year, the amount of bangers that IndyCar has had, not very many.
You had Milwaukee, both races.
Is that it?
Nashville was good.
Nashville was good. But you're talking about, okay, so.
Iowa was obviously, both races were duds.
I mean, Portland, no. I didn't think so. Laguna Seca, I mean, Laguna Seca's racier than it's ever been, but still not.
Not as good as it was as a season finale a couple of years ago.
Right, for sure. I just
Gateway was fine, but I guess that was prior to the hybrid.
This
or no, not last year. No, that was
post.
Post.
Yeah, because we were oval heavy.
Yeah,
late last year. I just this is I don't know. We're not going the company line of continuing to say this is the most competitive form of racing in the world and blah, 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 because other series have caught up in that department and they've made adjustments and continue to make adjustments. And meanwhile, IndyCar, I feel like, isn't making the adjustments as quickly as it needs to.
So let's take a look at the schedule for this weekend. And this, I think, is pretty good for IndyCar. But all the practice sessions and qualifying and warm-up all on FS1. So you have on Friday, March 21st, 6:30 Eastern in the evening, practice 1. Saturday, practice 2 is at 1 Eastern, qualifying 5 Eastern. Warm-up Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern, and then the race window, 3 Eastern, for the Thermal Club, Thermal Grand Prix. I have not seen an official, green flag time.
I've seen it covered starting at 3, but I haven't seen a green flag.
Yeah, I haven't either. So
that's another thing. So this race was in the morning last year?
Yes. It was at 9 a.m. Eastern.
In the morning, right?
Or not 9 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
So noon Eastern. So how's that play, too? I think there's going to be a lot to learn during practice here. And so I do think the team that is able to hit the ground running and maybe is locked in, I mean, the case is like that everywhere, but a place where you go for the first time in these conditions with having to run full stints, I think the team that figured it out at the thermal test, did they test or no? They did. No, they haven't?
Well, some drivers did, yeah.
Right? How much is that an advantage, with figuring out especially how quick the tires go away? So I think it's really going to be important those couple practices to really get it figured out.
So I found the green flag time, 12:17 Eastern, 65 laps.
So what are they thinking, a 3-stop race?
I would assume.
Okay. So you're looking at maybe 21, 22 laps on a set of tires, given no cautions.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I would be shocked. I'm sure someone will try to do a 2-stop, but I don't know how the alternates would last long enough to make that work unless they start on alternates. There's an early caution, they switch off,
right,
and then
kind of what we
go
saw
from
St.
there.
Pete with some drivers.
Also, one other thing about this event that's really cool: Meyershank Racing is partnering with Folds of Honor to honor first responders, veterans, and families of fallen heroes. They're hosting 500 veterans over the course of the race weekend. They have details on their social media on how you can learn more about that. There'll be behind-the-scenes access, chances for them to connect with Felix Rosenquist and Marcus Armstrong. Really, really cool thing that they're doing here.
Definitely. And I wonder if more teams are going to treat this event as a hospitality-like event for partners like Meyershank is doing, or honoring, active service members and first responders or other people, just because of the more intimate atmosphere that is at Thermal. And I'm sure other teams are doing it in some capacity, but bringing in some VIPs and stuff like that to maybe experience an IndyCar weekend without the chaos of thousands of people around all the time. So hopefully more teams are taking advantage of that, but Meyer Shank doing it for a very good reason, hosting 500 first responders and active servicemen and women.
Spotter Guide is out, and of note, this is the Mobile One sponsorship primary for Graham Rahal for his car that looks just awesome. And then I noticed that 76 was back on Connor Daly's car,
but we haven't got haven't announced
no official announcement. So I would hope we see that sometime this weekend. We'll see. But the Spotter Guide out as well. Pick to win.
I will go Scott McLaughlin.
Oh.
You should have given me first choice.
You know what? I'm going to go with Scott McLaughlin too. That's who I was
whatever. Let's do it. There's no rule we have to.
Yeah, no. You create the own rule for yourself. It's self-imposed.
That's true. I always.
So no, that's who I was going to pick. He ran well last year. I think he wins this one.
I would love nothing more than to see somebody outside the Penske and Ganassi team get a win at a track like this, but until it happens, I can't pick it.
Especially a new track early in this season, not one that they've done a lot of time at. Maybe you could have something wacky, but yeah, I like Scott McLaughlin to win.
So if you agree or disagree, let us know. Do you think we're in the... I know we have our Team Ganassi fans out there. No Dixon or Palou winning, at least in terms of you and I, which means one of them will probably win.
Yes.
But going Scott McLaughlin, see if he can bounce back.
For sure. And as always, you can find us on social media. IndyCar Podcast, the handle on Instagram, on Twitter /X. On Facebook, just search for New Track Record. New Track Record Podcast at gmail.com. That's how you can email us your questions, comments, rants, whatever. And you can support us via Patreon, patreon.com/New Track Record. Thanks to Xavier and others for your support. And as always, download and listen for free on your favorite podcasting platform, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. With that, mailbag time, and a few things to get to. First off, the preview is out for the new F1 movie that is aptly named F1, coming out this summer. And a lot of great responses. You'd posted the kind of the trailer for it, and it said it doesn't look like Driven 2. Nick J. Fletcher said he didn't even pick up a single quarter. I thought it was supposed to be good. Which that was outstanding.
Yes. If you don't know what we're talking about, just go watch Driven.
Yes. Indy Oreo, John Oreovitz said Driven 1.5. And Kel26 _ Rocketman said, but you kind of still want to see Driven 2 now. Yes. No, we need the sequel, right?
Yeah, if we get F1, then we get Driven 2. That should be how it is. But whether you like F1 or not, Joseph Krasinski is directing this movie. He directed Top Gun Maverick, and the cockpit scenes were just next level in Top Gun Maverick. And all indications are from the previews and stuff that I've seen, taking that technology and placing it in an F1 car, it just looks absolutely phenomenal. So whether you like the sport or the series of F1, I think it's just going to be a really good, hopefully, motorsports movie. It's your classic, washed up guy has to come help a up and coming driver, but I'm looking forward to it because I just think the driving sequences are going to be something we've just never seen in a motorsports movie.
Is it ever not a washed up driver having to help a young upcoming?
It's a cut and paste. Right?
Is there an alternate storyline?
You go to Driven, you go to Days of Thunder. Right? It's the same. Heck, even Turbo.
Yeah. I mean,
kind of similar.
Talladega Nights, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
He's not really washed up. Well, no, he is washed up.
After,
and then he's got a
back, right?
Yeah, and then he comes back.
It's the same old. Yeah. But even it looks like, if you watch the preview, even it looks like there's a crash in the woods, very driven.
Yes.
Whether he lands in a lake or pond or whatever, not unsure. But it was interesting. And the same thing, if you saw Gran Turismo, was kind of similar to, now that was based on a real life accident, but still, you're seeing tropes in the F1 movie that are very similar to motorsports movies. But I think the technology and allowing you to feel like you're in the driver's seat is going to be very, very cool. Similar to if you saw Top Gun Maverick and just what it did being in the cockpit of fighter planes.
Elsewhere on the mailbag, Lynn_IndyCar said, in honor of my comment about Jack, as in Dr. Jack Miller, hero card, your take on Newgarden's comments about the amazing competition in IndyCar. I found this hero card for my collection. Maybe Joseph was referring to the competition when he drove this car. And do you remember this? It's when he was with Sarah Fisher Hartman Racing, but the Century 21 car at Indy.
I did, yes.
This was what, 2013, I think?
And we felt like at that time, wow, that's a big sponsor.
Yeah.
Not only just for the series, but for that team to get. And I hadn't thought of it in a while, but seeing it brought back a lot of memories.
Also, Lynn chimed in, guys, that Brian is not my burner account. I'm still the biggest Dixon fan on your podcast. Also, I do like Justin. Can't wait for him to eat crow when this generation's greatest driver wins his 7th championship.
Whether it comes this year or not, we'll have to see. He'll have to beat his teammate.
Yes.
Who's off to the fast start. But just one race in, anything could happen.
Yeah. Very early in the season. Elsewhere in the mailbag for this week, you had posted a poll and talking about thermal. And we've kind of gone back and forth on thermal, on what we expect. But you had a good poll question about, what we expect for next year. So
would we say, what do we expect to be on the schedule next year? Thermal, Mexico City, both, or neither?
So the poll, which is wrapped up, but Mexico City nearly 41%, Thermal 22%, neither 26%, both 11.5%. Obviously, I'm rounding with these, so
that's interesting.
Don't check my math.
That's interesting that
neither was higher
than both. Right?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I mean, I think at least one of the other is on the schedule.
Marty Williams 63 said Hart says Mexico City, Head says neither. Nick J. Fletcher said Rydenburg Lakefront Airport, Cleveland. New Carter Verone said, I'll be happy the day I can confidently vote that change in IndyCar is more likely than no change.
Yes. Agreed.
That kind of sums up the poll better than we could have done, unfortunately. And then obviously comments on new car stuff, on where everything stands with that. So I posted saying, of course he doesn't see the need for a new car, talking about Chip Ganassi. And people saying, well, Indy Oreo said nobody who has to write a check wants a new car. Everybody who doesn't have to write a check wants a new car. Something's got to give. That is true. So that, again, it's just kind of where we're at. Also, this Oversteer TV said, you would think that IndyCar dropping down the list in popularity of racing series would be a push. Excellent point. Mm-hmm. At some point, you got to invest, right?
And that's the thing. And if IndyCar came out and said, this is what we're doing, and we don't care what you say, at least that would be something. Because we know they're not listening to the team owners anyway. At least you could come out and say, okay, team owners, this is the plan for the next 2 or 3 years. This is going to happen, and this is going to happen. This is what the car is going to be. This is how much it's going to weigh. This is what the engine block's going to look like, so our OEMs can adjust, or prospective OEMs can look into it. Like, just come out and lay it out. Because it's 2025. You want this thing on track 2027?
Yeah, you gotta be making progress.
Right? So
less than 2 years.
Who knows? We know that IndyCar, we talked about it earlier, just can't get out of its own way sometimes in some of these things, and it looks like this is just the latest example.
One more tweet to get to, then we have an email as well. This from S2000_Moose. More impressive, IndyCar drawing an audience of 1.4 million for a Sunday afternoon race on network TV, or F1 drawing 1.1 million for a midnight race on cable. Will the Thermal race draw a bigger audience than the China F1 race this weekend? So what time is China
That's what I'm looking at right now. So let me open the...
Obviously, I would say it was more impressive for F1 getting 1.1 million for a midnight Eastern race on cable compared to St. Pete.
Yeah, the race is at 3 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah,
which
so
I think
IndyCar
is even
better
worse than midnight.
Yeah, no, that's midnight Pacific. So even your West Coast viewers are, probably going to be checked out pretty quick. I would say IndyCar is going to have a better TV rating, even with March Madness going on.
I would hope so.
If they can't get a better rating than F1 in the middle of the night in China, yeah, we have serious problems here. Serious problems.
It was a good start for Formula One, especially a noon start to that race, or a midnight start to that race. I think it peaked at like 1.8 million, something like that, early on in the race. I think people tuned in, watched the start, then went to bed, at least some people. It was a good race, entertaining race, chaos with the rain. Rookies had trouble, but I do think that was the more impressive rating than IndyCar's first. As good as the St. Pete rating was, I think F1 doing what it did on cable, as you mentioned, was more impressive. But we'll see. I would hope IndyCar beats Formula One this weekend.
Yes. And then an email, this is from Eric, said, hey guys, maybe I'm the odd one, but I disagree on opinions of Thermal. I personally think it's a fun track to watch with fast sweeping turns and room to pass regardless of attendees. I hope you're right. I hope that's how it plays out on TV.
And we were a little harsh. I was a little harsh saying it's like NOLA, but with a better view. I still feel that way, but I would love to get my mind changed this weekend. I would love Thermal to be an exciting race with plenty of passing, not dictated by tire strategy, but actual passing on track. I would welcome it. And I think if it's a good event, maybe it's back on the schedule next year as a full points event. It's just a lot of unknowns, and we don't know how it's going to play out come Sunday.
That does it for the mailbag. Time for news and notes, and a lot of newsworthy and noteworthy items for this week. And we start Racer putting out an article on what the Indy 500 entry list could look like. Really nothing groundbreaking in this story by Marshall Pruitt of Racer.com. Really just comes down to 34 locked in, as we know. The 35th is Catherine Legg. She's still actively searching for a chassis to utilize. Now, why is that part notable? Well, it's because Top Gun Racing, which was partnered with Able Motorsports then, well, that chassis was sold to Prema. So that's, I think, why it could be a chassis issue, because Marshall also had a story saying that Able Motorsports is not going to run an extra entry for the 500, which, I mean, one, didn't think that was on their radar. Right. Since they don't have a chassis, that's obviously not going to happen. He says Dale Coyne Racing had options to run a third car, but says it's planning on 2. Juncos, close to entering a third car, tells Racer it will also remain at 2. Foyt sticking with 2. Ganassi not going to expand to 5. Able had inquiries, but they're focusing obviously on Jacob Able as he's a rookie. Brian Herta Autosport also understood, which I think we mentioned this last week, to have been contacted. They're going to skip this year's race, aimed toward making a return in 2026. So where does Catherine Legg end up? Does it have to be her own team? Because if it's not Coyne and it's not...
And it has to be a Honda team.
Yeah, it has to be a Honda team. Chevy is full of 18 cars, as Pruitt confirmed. So Honda would have to be the 35th entry. So where would it be? Do we get a 5th Rahal? I doubt it.
Yeah, I doubt it too. But I think maybe the combination of IndyCar / IMS wanting it to happen with with a solid sponsor with ELF. And if some of these teams that are maybe still have a shot can get through the next couple races without completely trashing a chassis. I think maybe that's the hesitancy we're seeing out of some of these teams that are like, May is a long way away in terms of the between now and then with events. So if we're rebuilding cars consistently the next 2 or 3 events, we're not going to be really interested in running them. So maybe if we can have another clean-ish race like we did at St. Pete, I think maybe that could help the bottom line for some of these teams and maybe look to add. But you hope that it's always been, for a long time it was engines, right? This year's unique. We're at a chassis situation. Honda's like, yeah, we're in. It's just finding a chassis. And that is the hang up right now for Catherine Legge. And then, of course, with the team. But usually
what team is there? I guess I'm like kind of confused. Fifth Rahal seems to be the
Coin. I still
the
feel
Coin said they're still running 2, but could that? I mean, it could change.
I could see Coin being the
he's holding out for more money.
Well,
negotiation tool.
Well, why wouldn't Coin, who is notorious for waiting to the last moment for his regular drivers, wait till the last moment for an Indy 500 driver? I would still say the most likely is Dale Coyne, because I think he still has a soft spot. He has the existing relationship from last year with Legge and ELF, and a soft spot for, I think, a desire of Legge to be in it, a female in the race, and maybe some added financial incentive from the series. But like we said last week, you don't want to add another car if you're simply competing against yourself to make the race. If Legge is in, that means 2 driver car combinations are out, and it's a short list of teams that you feel are going to be on that list of competing to make sure all their drivers are in.
Speaking of IMS, a lot of IMS newsworthy options. First off, a really cool promotion. Prairie Farms Dairy, which is a Midwestern dairy, very popular. Often you think of them in school lunch with the milk carton, right, that you get with your school lunch growing up. So
was that like? Was it tough? Because you'd open it and you'd pull it apart on motion, and then you'd push. Remember, like the ones where you'd push and it wouldn't.
It just like wouldn't open, separate.
You just had to rip the whole thing open.
Yes. Yeah. I do recall.
Every time I hear Partridge Farm, what is it? Pepperidge Farms?
No, Prairie Farms.
Prairie Farms. Pepperidge is makes bread and stuff.
Snacks. Yeah.
It always comes to my mind trying to open those cardboard milk containers.
Well, they're partnering with IMS, new retail sales effort, braided milk carton packaging with several IndyCar drivers on it, and it will be Joseph Newgarden, Takuma Sato, Will Power, Elio Castroneves, and Marcus Ericsson. They're distributing 80 million half-pint milk cartons with the Winners Drink Milk racing theme to schools in the Midwest. Now, these aren't the so that's the half-pint, but then they're also going to have the in retail stores. It'll be the pint,
full
pint plastic bottles that you can get. So I guess collect them all, except the milk will go bad.
Yeah. Drink the milk first, then just wash out the container.
But super really cool partnership. Yeah. This is the kind of activation where you get in front of people. A couple other IMS related things. They have announced the collectible bronze coin is here. Only 500 available. There's a link on their social media on how you can get that. And Indy Card Exchange is partnering with Parkside Cards and IMS with an autograph session for drivers Jack Harvey, Connor Daly, Marcus Ericsson, and Marcus Armstrong. Free signing, 1 autograph per driver. You can bring your own item. They will provide cards, but this is coming up next Sunday, March 30th, 3 to 5 p.m. at Indy Card Exchange in Indianapolis. Full details on their social media and their website as well. So another cool event. I know they did a signing last year. And then one other thing on the Prairie Farms thing that Adam Stern has, so more than 50 retailers are carrying the limited edition Indy 500 milk bottles. This includes Walmart, Dunkin' Donuts, Dairy Queen, Krispy Kreme, CVS, 7-Eleven, and Circle K.
All right.
Talk about getting in front of some big brands.
Definitely. And it's really, when you look at activation, it's some of the things that maybe aren't, I want to say high profile.
It's not sexy.
But it's everyday things,
yes.
right?
This is what NASCAR's done for years.
Right.
It's getting in front of you at a gas station. You saw the Alex Blow ad when you were pumping gas the other day.
Right, yeah.
It's being inside the convenience store, right? Or being inside the grocery store. Mission's done a good job with, McLaren drivers in grocery stores with little pop-ups.
Right.
These are the kind of things that as IndyCar builds, this is how you get awareness and
right.
people want to check stuff out. So this is a massive step. I know it doesn't sound or look like that big of a deal, but to me, this is a big deal. It's a huge
right.
deal for visibility for IndyCar.
And, dabbling in marketing here and there with my current job is how many people, there aren't going to be a lot of people that grab a half pint of milk and see a driver and say, yeah, I'm going to watch the Indy 500 because this guy looks cool. It's when you're just hit time and time again about different things, even when you're not thinking about it. You pick up a thing of milk, you see the Indy 500 logo. Then all of a sudden you're pumping gas and you see Alex Palou and say, okay, Indy 5, or, Alex Palou driver. Then you see a commercial when you're watching Fox for the next race for IndyCar. It just kind of builds on itself, okay? The majority of marketing doesn't directly pay off one-to-one. See an ad, tune in. It's just a series of things, and you get into people's subconscious, right? And all of a sudden they're, hey, I don't know why, but I saw this commercial and then this, and maybe I'll tune in, or I'm flipping channels and you land on Fox, say, hey, that guy was, I saw him at a gas pump. Or it's just subconsciously, people are more aware of your product, of your series, of your drivers. It just builds on it. No effort is too small when you're trying to grow your audience.
And IndyCar fans themselves do a great job of supporting series partners,
totally.
Team and driver sponsor. I mean, I pretty much only get my gas at Shell. I bought Firestone tires before. That's the kind of stuff. There's a high brand loyalty.
I know a lot of people went to Chili's the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I would go, but there isn't one in Fort Wayne.
They closed it,
Yeah, I literally would go.
Really rebounded, to be honest, because they've been.
Not anymore.
No.
They went viral on TikTok and they have not looked back.
Seriously.
Chili's and Bryant, by the way, sponsoring Kirkwood and Ericsson again. So
saw that.
They never made say, hey, we're a full season sponsor, but obviously a good sign to be back on board for another race.
Yeah, but no marketing is bad marketing. And you mentioned the cards. The fact that they're signing cards, does that mean, because we haven't been able to find 2025 packs yet. Are they not out?
I think you can order. I know last year it was like a pre-order.
Okay.
I haven't looked.
Because what is it, Parkside
yes.
cards? I went to their website and you could pre-order something that was like $160 or something.
It's probably the box set.
Yeah, I was like, I just want packs, but I didn't see any.
So they've sold out of like subscriptions and special editions.
It was like that brick pack thingy.
Yeah. The $30 brick.
Is that all it was? $30?
That's sold out.
Okay, well, maybe that's why I didn't look too hard on those.
Okay, looks like the retail hanger packs are available. They're $10.
Oh, okay. 2025.
Yep.
All right, well, maybe.
Wait, no, 2024. You're
See?
right.
I couldn't find 2025.
So the season subscription is, it's $260, but that's sold out. So I think that's like the box that has all the cards.
Right. So, yeah, I don't think you can get the packs yet, which is fine. It's good to see that the season packs are sold out. That's great. But once we get some packs, we'll do maybe a live opening of the 2025 pack, and maybe the winner of our fantasy challenge could maybe get a pack or two as well.
Well, yeah, they are getting a pack.
They are getting
for sure.
Which I am a 76th. I saw 76th place after one.
I think I'm like 18th.
Oh,
in fantasy.
look at you.
Yeah. It means a lot. They're like 110 people or whatever.
Yeah, and I'm in a Formula One. I think I'm in Pit Lane Parlay's Formula One, actually. It is even harder. So, you had to pick 5 drivers for the IndyCar one with $100 million. And I went into the Formula One and was like, okay, I'm not going to pick Max or Lando because that'd be costing too much money. So I think I grabbed maybe George Russell. And then I started building from there. So I didn't have any. I had no money to get my team. You have 5 drivers and then a team with $100 million. I didn't even have enough money to get Sauber. So I had to like readjust and ended up getting Williams. And after one race, I'm higher in the Formula One than I am IndyCar. Maybe that shows a little bit of maybe why I shouldn't be co-hosting this podcast. But it is difficult. There's a lot of strategery and, quite frankly, luck in it. But hopefully I can rebound this week at Thermal.
I've never been good at fantasy sports in general, so never listen to my advice, no matter the sport, when it comes to fantasy sports. Rattling through a few other items and news and notes, the Andretti Global name, the Andretti is going to stay for years to come, according to Nathan Brown, IndyStar.com. This is really cool. Wood Brothers Racing in NASCAR, the throwback race at Darlington coming up, their paint scheme is inspired by Jim Clark's 1965 Lotus Ford. So they have WBR powered by Ford, and it's the same green and yellow on the car. It looks really cool. Such a cool collaboration to kind of pay homage to Jim Clark and the Lotus powered by Ford.
Really, really cool. And I think it was was it a Wood Brothers entry, or were they just affiliated with that Jim Clark winner?
I think they may have been affiliated.
I think they were too. So they were a part of that, and just coming off their win last week with Josh Berry at Vegas. So Wood Brothers living large right now, and that's a really, really sexy livery for the throwback weekend at Darlington later this season.
One other NASCAR note that I find interesting, but Adam Stern found this story. It's in French, but NASCAR close to an agreement for a return to Montreal in 2026 and 2027. Based on the Google Translator, it looks like it will be Xfinity in 26, Cup in 27. This is the kind of stuff IndyCar needs to do. Yes,
yeah. I'm almost past IndyCar being first. Like, I know some people were kind of hung up on racing in Mexico being first. I just want IndyCar to go to Mexico. Same thing with Montreal or anywhere in Canada. I don't care if IndyCar's first. I just want IndyCar to be elsewhere in Canada other than Toronto. So maybe it paves the way in a way for IndyCar to go back. I don't know, but they'll be at the Circuit des Gilles Villeneuve, I presume.
Yes.
So where Formula One races. So yeah, I'd like to see IndyCar return some way at some point, but I'm not worried. Hopefully it doesn't just shut the door for any IndyCar return. Hopefully, the circuit wants to get more involved in hosting. And if it goes well for Cup, maybe by the end of the decade, IndyCar could be there.
Elsewhere at IMS, the scoring pylons on top of the pagoda, those are getting fixed.
So I never knew they were out.
Yeah, they've been out for years.
So they've not worked for the entire, like when they would put car numbers up there, they weren't working.
No, they haven't worked for a long time. So that's cool.
Guess it shows how much I pay attention.
Doug Bowles said it will light up again beginning this May. There will be a Behind the Bricks episode on the process for that. And speaking of the 500 again, really cool looking options for you. Devlin DeFrancesco's car with Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing is going to be sponsored by Dogecoin. Yes, the meme coin for the Indy 500. But you can vote on the options. Blaze, Turbo Wave, and Banana Boost. I voted for Blaze. Did you vote for Banana Boost?
No, I went
Turbo Wave.
Turbo Wave.
Yeah, so you can vote.
They're all three pretty cool.
Yes.
Different liveries.
So I thought that was cool as well. Pato Award also, actually, I'll save that for Tweets of the Week, but Milwaukee Mile, there's a hint. Tickets are on sale now for the Snap-on Milwaukee Mile 250.
Cool.
Coming August 23rd and 24th. I didn't know this, but Joseph Newgarden, you mentioned Josh Berry winning for Wood Brothers Racing. They were classmates at Ellis Middle School in Hendersonville, Tennessee. That from Arnie Shribben. I had no idea.
Me neither.
I thought that was pretty cool. And with that, anything that we missed?
I don't think so. I think we made another banger of a show with not much going on this week.
This is what we do, right?
This is how we roll, so to speak.
Time for Tweets of the Week. And the first tweet from NASCAR Chasm said, March Madness at IMS, multiple open-air courts down the front stretch, benefits multiple simultaneous games, scoring pylon can show all the scores. Instead of opening tip, ball drop from pagoda like a sandwich. We're used to hearing whistles all the time. That's the kicker. That is the kicker that makes this perfect, is hearing whistles all the time. If you've ever been whistled at by a safety patrol worker at the Speedway, you know exactly what we're talking about. Also,
it was a different look, too, because usually, it's a football field.
Yeah.
Now we have basketball courts on the front.
Multiple basketball courts a second.
Yes, absolutely.
And then this from Save the Mile, which follows the Milwaukee Mile, said, "Hey, Pato Award, look who's on billboards now." And it's one for, of course, the Snap-on Milwaukee Mile 250. That joke just is never going to get old to me. And then finally, one other, and this is on the Dogecoin sponsorship, and it was Christopher DeHard saying, "Such livery, mini speed, very color, wow." Which, again, Doge the dog, that's kind of talking like Doge the dog. So I thought that was a good throwback. We're going back like 10, 12 years in internet history there. But with that, time for our random split air driver of the week.
All right, we continue to really delve deep into the kart seasons in our random split air driver of the week and Champ Car and Champ Car World Series. We're going with kind of a familiar name, Nelson Philippe.
Hey!
How about that? The native, and I didn't realize some of the history with Nelson Philippe, native of Valence Drôme, France, and raced in 41 races in the Champ Car World Series. I did not know this. He had just 1 year of experience in cars. He raced go-karts from 1998 to 2002. He raced in the Barber Dodge Pro Series in 2003. In 2004, which is 1 year experience in cars, right? Like actual vehicles. He tested with 2 Champ Car teams. Now, is this an indication on how much Champ Car was struggling in the mid-2000s, approaching the mid-2000s, with a guy that had raced in just 1 year of cars? He signed with Rocket Sports Racing, and at age 17 became the youngest driver to ever race in Champ Car.
I didn't know he was 17.
17 years old. Because I looked it up, and he's only 38 years old, and I'm going, this can't be the same guy. This can't be right.
I'm learning things I didn't know. I mean, obviously, I'd heard of Nelson Philippe. He ran 2 full seasons?
But that was his latter parts of the year. So that was 2006 and 2005, 2006 were his 2 full-time seasons.
Okay.
So in 2004, he started Rocket Sports Racing, had 5 races for them. Okay. Then he went over to Conquest, raced Denver, and then the final 5 races of that season.
Did he race for HVM one of those years?
Yes, it was in 2006.
Okay.
He raced with CTE HVM. That was when he got his first and only win in Champ Car at Surfers Paradise.
Now, CTE stood for Cedric the Entertainer.
Yes, correct. So yes, you were talking about famous people that were involved in racing, Cedric the Entertainer. Now, going through the rest of his... in 2007, it was announced that Nelson Philippe would return to Champ Car and drive for his former team, Conquest. He raced at Surfers, Mexico City. He said, "At the time, I'm thrilled to be back. No better time than now, with Surfers Paradise around the corner. It's been a challenge to be sidelined this year because of the lack of money, but was able to come back." And then he was able in 2007 with Conquest Racing to get 6th at Surfers a year after he won, and then finished 12th at Mexico City to conclude that season. Then he raced for Minardi HVM Racing in the Grand Prix in 2008, which was the one-off, right? No. That was a car.
Oh, you're talking Long Beach?
Yes. Long Beach was used 15th.
And that was it, right?
Then he came back and raced the one and only Indianapolis 500. He raced in 2009 with Conquest.
I didn't realize that he raced an Indy 500.
He did.
Now, Conquest, when they came into the series, I remember they had Jaime Camara and Enrique Bernoldi in 2008, but I guess I forgot that they also... So were they Indy 500 only in 2009?
Yes.
Okay, that would be why, because I knew they weren't full-time in 2009 due to the recession. A lot of the teams that had just come over in 2008, didn't make the transition into 2009 just because of that.
Yes. So actually, he announced in April of 2009 that he'd be fielding the first ever carbon neutral entry And that was the 2009 race. Said he struggled in practice qualifying, ultimately made the field, started 31st, ended 25th. He brushed the wall lap 130 and was done. Still in 2009, and I didn't remember this either. He was actually going to be back in the seat for Conquest at Sonoma. But he spun exiting turn 3 during practice, barely avoided EJ Vizo, and then Will Power smashes into him.
As soon as you said Sonoma practice 2009, Correct. I knew where you were going.
Power suffered 2 fractured vertebrae. Philippe suffered a fractured ankle. Both also suffered concussions and were subsequently hospitalized. So that was the last time we saw Nelson Philippe in open wheel, at least with IndyCar / Champ Car, was that Sonoma race in 2009. But he indeed, teach you something every day, knew he did start the 2009 Indianapolis 500 for HVM Racing. Afterwards, got into some Super Formula, did some Asia Series, but that was it for Nelson Philippe, the youngest driver to ever start a Champ Car / kart race at 17 years old.
Now, Graham Rahal was 17 as well, right, when he started?
I think it was semantics when it came down to by day.
Okay.
And so
okay.
He was still the
Because Rahal did the 2007 season at Newman Haas, teammates with Bourdais.
Yes.
And then came into IndyCar and was teamed with Justin Wilson, right, in 2008. Obviously won St. Pete in the opener.
Right, yep.
And he was the youngest winner. And then Herta beat that at COTA in 2019. So, wow.
So,
Learning a lot of new things. I mean, obviously I had heard of Nelson Philippe, but didn't realize he started in Indy 500. Forgot about that.
Yep.
Didn't know he was so young.
He was so young.
When he started in Champ Car.
But then jogged your memory when I talked about Sonoma practice.
Yes.
That wreck that happened there. So, Nelson Philippe, still just 38 years old.
Wild.
This week's Random Split Area Driver of the Week.
All right, that does it for us. Enjoy the Thermal Grand Prix this weekend.
If you're going, we're available. Let us know.
Yeah.
We have a couple open seats. You can fly us out there.
Yeah, please let us know. But hopefully it's an exciting race, and hopefully we get something out of it, because my fear is it's NOLA 2.0. Now, it's not going to rain, so you don't have to worry about that factor, but that's my fear. But best case scenario, it turns into an event kind of like, I don't know, like a Barber, where we thought it's not going to work. It's a motorcycle track. And then it's turned into not only one of the better road course races on the schedule, but one of the better attended events, and probably one of the top 5 most stable events on the schedule as well ever since. So we'll see what happens with Thermal this weekend. We'll be back next week to recap it all. For Justin Kinney, I am Caleb Hatch. This has been New Track Record Podcast.